Hello, everybody. Welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pellavy. I'll be your moderator for the food fight today. And today's topic will be politics, which we've started a political show, which is every Tuesday and Thursday live, but also it's streamed throughout the week. If you haven't seen it yet, it's good. A lot of people are. It's about world politics and politics in the United States. Now, remember, this show was specifically designed for two people. One of them who finally showed up today on this show, Shaquille Latmer, and the other one is Dr. Dan Worthington. So let's bring in the person that the show was designed for but hasn't shown up from Australia, mate, Shaquille Latmer. Shaquille.
No, it's actually Dan's idea. Don't blame me. It's just Dan's idea.
Well, we actually did it. We actually have a show, and it's getting great ratings.
Yes, and we have two episodes. I'll let you know. We have two episodes that was recorded by the guys from Edge Radio Australia. So it's a joint venture between Edge Radio Australia and Pod TV, talking about Australian politics and occasionally talking about the nonsense that's going on in America.
Well, I finally found I went through all this crazy education in college, and forget K through 12, that was a waste. And finally, I read the U.S. budget because it's available on the internet. I'm going, yeah. How come I can go through college for 10 years and not one course on the U.S. budget? It's 25% of our GDP. You got to imagine, if you make 100,000, that's 25,000 of your dollars going there. If you make 200,000, 50,000. If you're making $1 million, it's $250,000 of your money being spent. Yet we don't go over it, and frankly, we're not serious about it.
No. Some of us are, Nick. I have to correct you. Some of us are, and some of us are so livid at the wanton expenditures of Western governments that we leave. That we go, we're sick of this. We don't want to be under the government's thumb. We're out of here, baby. Bye-bye.
Well, it's a big problem. But we're going to bring more problems because we have them sitting backstage. Person who's a member of the mega society. You try to bring smart people in, make them solve the problem. That's always been my theory. And so we do have...
Oh, heaven help us with the smart people.
What? He's a smart guy. Put it through his...
yes, I know. But if you want him to solve the problem, all you have to do is ask him, Rick, have you ever known a group of high IQ people that have solved a problem?
I know, not a group. No, Mensa was formed right after World War II. Mensa, which means table in Latin. Somebody thought...
Excuse me, I'm a Mensa member. Leave me alone.
So this guy who started Mensa said, if you set up a round table of all the smartest people, they would solve all the world's problems. Hasn't happened. Won't happen. Individual smart people can solve stuff, but,
You know, Rick, they have this thing called oppositional defiance disorder. And that's what society realized. After the round table of the most intelligent people didn't work, they created all over the world these round capitals where all the politicians go to. The dumbest people on earth. They thought if the smartest people on earth can't solve the problems, we'll get the dumbest people on earth. And they didn't solve the problems either.
Right now, to be a national level politician in America, you've got to be kind of an idiot and kind of a scumbag, because what you have to do, which is like huge amounts of fundraising, if you're a congressman, you have to go to this separate building for 20 hours a week and cold call people and beg them for money. Like, somebody with integrity and intelligence doesn't want to put themselves through that.
Yeah.
So we have the telemarketers of America. What other guests do we have, Nick?
Hold on a second. I just popped in, and I've got a thing that I think that Nick will find very interesting. It actually involves, and I know that our global audience...
Well, let's bring the other guests on first.
It actually involves North Carolina and media and censorship and all along those lines, because it actually involves a classical radio station that has decided not to air certain things and all along those lines. So I got a letter from a friend of mine into that whole space of classical music, because apparently there are certain things that exist that this station feels will be offensive. So therefore, they are not going to air stuff coming from the Metropolitan Opera, which I know Nick loves, and all along those lines, because one of them was a play about Malcolm X. So they felt that this would be a bad thing to show this particular play. And they gave all their reasoning and all along those lines as to why some of these things were cut out. And they definitely had some interesting ones. And then I just want to hear maybe even Shaquille's thoughts. But one was Dead Man Walking, which is about the execution of a convicted murder based on a real life double murder. And they said that there's the violence involved in that. X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, was presented in English. It addresses adult themes and contains offensive language plainly audible to everyone, children included. This makes this opera unsuitable for a general audience. Fire Shut Up in My Bones, which is presented in English. It contains adult themes and contains adult offensive language plainly audible to everyone, children included. That makes that general audience offensive. And they also said El Nino, which is supposedly about the visit of Archangel Gabriel to the Virgin Mary. However, in the non-biblical version, which the Holy Spirit overshadows Mary, she undergoes pain and mental agony. The music and background vocalization in that scene leaves nothing to the imagination.
All right, so
hold on, I got one more. The Hours is presented in English. It contains a fantasy segment containing a young girl's suicidal death, a second segment with yet another suicidal contemplation, finally another segment considered an actual death. So therefore,
this broadcaster wants to babysit everybody. The same way a lot of politicians don't want like possibly offensive books in a school library. Yet, just this past week on regular TV, I saw a scene where a big wad of ejaculate just splattered across the room. I saw a superhero show featuring a character named Little Cricket, and her superpower was shrinking down to 3 inches. And this is a show that you can just tune in, can be watched by anybody. This guy who was insecure about the size of his penis had Little Cricket shrink down to 3 inches and grab his penis so he could feel that his penis looked bigger. This is on regular TV. Babysitting people in school, on the radio, is garbage because any kid, any person can find wildly just offensive, vulgar stuff just with either by accident or with like half a second of poking around. I don't like any babysitting because the stuff is out there. The internet is a cornucopia of 1 billion images of porn. The porn genie, the vulgarity genie is out of the bag, and we pretty much just have to live with it.
I want to say something. I want to say something here. Last time, I believe it was the last time, it might have been a couple of shows ago, I was on with Rick, and Rick mentioned some of his religious proclivities. Now, I never asked, and I never would have known. I also know nothing actually about, coming from Australia, I know nothing about the religion that Rick talked about. And you know what? It doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to treat Rick differently. I'm not going to treat him worse. I'm not going to treat him better. I don't know. What we're faced with today is a situation where young people are told to navigate this weird kind of world where if you say anything or you do anything, it could be considered offensive. Now, I'm just going to take a guess here. When Rick and I meet next time in California, because I'm definitely going to be meeting with Rick when I'm there, if I make a faux pas, I don't think that Rick's going to go, you racist, sexist, whatever. He's not going to do that. He's going to go, oh, Shaq, you may not have actually realized this, but hey, like that's actually, something that we might be offended by or whatever. And I'll go, oh, look, I'm sorry, Rick, I didn't realize. But what we face with today is this world where any wrong move or any wrong statement or any wrong sentence can be taken out of context, and not just taken out of context today, but taken out of context in 20 years from now. And that's not helpful to us. We're all the same people, right? We're all just trying to live our lives as best we can. Let's take some of the venom out of our, not just disagreements, but also out of our misunderstandings with each other.
But Shaquille, along those same lines, one of the things that I think that this is a response to, and like I said, I got this letter over the weekend from a very dear friend and everything, was that sometimes there is just like you were talking about the response that you have had to a number of things, both on this show and other shows, there is also times that people are not wanting to offend those that they feel they might offend if they appear to be quote unquote too woke and all along those lines. So my guess is that a lot of these plays, including historical plays, because one of those was about Malcolm X and his life, and one was it'd be like banning Jesus Christ Superstar, which we all know was a fictional work, and all along those lines, is that they are afraid that they will be offending people that might stumble across it as they are listening to the radio, because this is a very well-known.
I'll respond to that. I'll respond to that, Mark, and I'll say two things. One, and Rick, please, because I'm using you as an example. If you don't agree with me, please step in. I'll say a couple of things. One, I think Rick would be more offended if he realised that I was censoring what I was saying out of a fear that I might offend him, rather than just saying what I thought and him responding to me. Okay. The second thing I'll say is, I think most people, especially in our age group, have seen Schindler's List. I remember when I first watched it, and there's a scene in that movie, because I didn't like the movie, I remember, but when I first watched it, I hated it because I was a kid. It's black and white. What the hell is this? Right? I didn't understand what was going on. And then all of a sudden, there's this random scene with this girl in a red dress who's like walking down the street. I'm like, this is stupid. And I remember watching it again when I was 12. I watched it again when I was 15, 16. I watched it many times over my lives. And obviously, as I got older and I understood more about the historical context, that film meant so much more to me. Okay. So last time I was in Germany, I actually went to Auschwitz. And I was haunted. I just didn't know quite how to. I don't know what I was expecting, but whatever it was, it just wasn't what I was expecting. Because you get there, and you're sort of expecting that black and white, horrible place of death, but it's not. There's these beautiful greenery around. There's flowers, growing and stuff like that. And you're sort of looking at this place, and it's not supposed to be pretty. It's not supposed to be beautiful, but it is. And for me, I just looked at it and I was so haunted, because I was like, how could one of human history's, certainly modern human history's, most horrible events have occurred in this place? I actually wanted it to look really ugly. I wanted it to be a really horrible place. Please let me finish, Mark. I wanted it to look like a really ugly, horrible place, and it wasn't. And when you look over to the side, there's birds flying. You think, how did the people who were in those camps, how did they feel? Did they see the beauty of those birds, or were they just, in this constant state of oppression? And also, how did the people that took their lives feel when they saw the birds and the bees and the butterflies, etc.? It was really haunting for me. And I think we have to all recognize the good and the bad in our histories without thinking that those people who don't know about it or don't see it or may say something that's not quite right are somehow our enemies, because they're not.
I've used the expression warts and all, because I think that you should look at history, the warts and all, and I have no problem with people even looking at the negative aspects of Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, and they did have some interesting parts of their history.
I'd really like, because of the subject matter, I'd really like Rick to respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I follow Auschwitz on Twitter, and once an hour that Auschwitz will tweet out like one of the victims, Marie Oswishim, Polish teacher, entered Auschwitz 21st of August, 1942, died and murdered, November 1942. And it's a weird thing, because I'm always hitting fave, like to all these murdered people. I think you can talk about anything. I think I feel I can make a joke about just about anything, but I need to, do a little due diligence to see what the current land, like my wife, like I said, has worked at progressive high schools, and high schools in LA are like the proving ground for how you deal with like trans and with pronouns. And my wife will come home and she'll tell me what's going on with that stuff. And we'll joke about it because it's interesting and there's some situations that are funny. But, if I'm dealing with a trans person, I'm going to try to get their pronoun right, but I'm still going to joke about trans stuff.
It's interesting because Nick made a comment earlier about the Freedom Friday show, which Dan Worthington and myself are on a joint venture with Edge Radio here in Perth. And people, it's funny because when I'm with them, they are mostly, we'll exclude Dan, but the people on Edge Radio tend to appear to be much more on the right, even allegedly on the hard right. So when I'm on there, I'm the lefty, right? I'm the left-wing guy. And I make a point of reminding the audience and the other people I'm on the show with, I'm not a lefty. I'm not a righty, right? I believe in libertarianism in my heart. I understand that there's no such thing as a libertarian utopia. We need to have government, but, I believe in freedom. And that also comes to things like the trans movement, gay marriage, gay rights, all those sorts of things, that people should be able to do what they want to do. But at what point does it become forced on the rest of us? I think there's a balancing act. I'm not saying that I've got that balancing act right or wrong, but I think that's a dichotomy that we all have to face. But I don't hate anybody. And so when I get on with, very conservative people who are absolutely 100% against this, I call them out and say, well, if you want freedom for your families, why should another family be able to make these sorts of choices? You don't agree with them. I understand why you don't agree with them. But why shouldn't they be able to make the same sorts of choices for their families that you would make for your own? And I think that's an important point. But we've just lost that ability, I think, to be able to see each other and understand that we all have different life experiences, different histories, that we are all going through different things. And just because somebody doesn't agree with you doesn't mean that they're your enemy. When Joe Biden first won the election, I was so pleased to hear him in one of his early speeches when he said, look, America, we have to get past this. Let's not look at our political opponents and think that they're our enemies. They are our fellow Americans. Without passing any commentary on what's happened over the last couple of years, I thought that was really right. It was something that Donald Trump should have said in the early days. Just run the country for everybody. We're not always going to get it right, but we've lost that. And we've lost that because of this tribalism and this, if you don't agree with me, you're my enemy. And we need to move past that, in my opinion. Rick?
Well, I'd say that there's money to be made off and political careers to be made off of division. That, with one source of this division is gerrymandering, where it leads to the most extreme politicians getting elected. If you're in a safely Democratic or safely Republican district, if you win your primary, you're going to win the general. And the people who show up to vote in the primary are the lunatics. So the lunatic wins. And it's so if you look, people have charted, Pew, the survey company, has charted increasing division over time. And you can show how there used to be a bunch of centrist politicians. You had two bell curves, the liberal curve, the conservative curve, and they used to overlap, and they've been sliding apart. So there's almost nobody left in the center anymore. Now, there are plenty of people left in the center in America. In fact, independents, there have never been more people unaffiliated with either party. But then you go to the Congress, you go to the Senate, and it's full of frickin' extremists.
Well, like I said on the Radio Edge Pod TV joint session for Freedom Fridays, I said when you look at the two political parties around the world, especially America, left and right, they're just two cheeks of the same ass. And when those cheeks are squeezed together,
you don't poop
it's
yourself.
okay. But once they start to spread, they let spew from that circle orifice of our capitals a unpalatable stench that nobody wants. And I'm going to stand by that comment to the day I die, I think.
Putin loves this stuff. Putin spends a little amount of money, $300 million over the past 8 or 10 years on sowing anger and discord in the Western democracies. He loves when we're pissed at each other. And of course, he's not the only source of discord, but agents of chaos love the division.
Well, Rick, in all fairness, we've done the same thing to them. So,
yeah,
we're in no position to complain.
Okay, but I don't like when it happens to us.
Well, don't dish it out if you can't take it. I mean, look at what we've done, and even within our own communities, I'll probably get booted off. My battery will miraculously die, and all of a sudden I won't be able to rejoin. But anybody want to explain to me why I should trust media, or just about America? We'll talk about your country. We'll forget about mine for a moment. Anyone want to explain to me why I should trust the American government, any side of politics that's in charge, the American government and or the American media after Operation Mockingbird? Can someone please explain to me why I should have any faith that I'm being told the truth?
Explain Operation Mockingbird.
Bullshit, Rick. You know exactly what Operation Mockingbird is.
I'm going to need to be reminded.
Nick, you're a lawyer. Please tell Rick.
Australian thing. I haven't seen any Operation Mockingbird.
So Operation Mockingbird is the CIA, and this came out especially when McCarthyism was an issue. This came out where the CIA has openly admitted that they infiltrated media and would push and promote certain stories in order to influence the opinion of the greater American public.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, and that the CIA is supposed to confine its trickery to this. FBI is domestic. The CIA should not be messing with the internal affairs of the U.S. at all.
Do me a favor, Rick. While we're talking, just Google it while we're talking. Because, hey, I'm not American, and the rate I'm going, I'll probably never be allowed back in. But please, just Google it while we're talking. My point being is, question everything, don't accept anything you're told, and why would you ever trust government or the media or any other large, powerful group? Why would you do that? I certainly wouldn't. I don't, and I live my life saying I don't want to be under the thumb of the government. I want to be able to live my life. I don't want to hurt people, right? If I hurt somebody or do the wrong thing, fair enough. Government's got something to say, but otherwise, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Let me run my own race through life.
Yeah, I would argue that we shouldn't give Russia a pass just because the U.S. has done bad stuff. And I'd argue that Russia and the Soviet Union did way worse stuff. The U.S. has never murdered 50 million of its own people, Stalin killed tens of millions. I mean, we've never had that. So
Rick, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. But neither you or I really know what's going on with Russia and the Ukraine right now. We can only just judge at what we're being told by the television, right? What's going on? Did Vladimir Putin look? If you watch Fox News, here's what they're going to tell you: Joe Biden won the election, and Vladimir Putin went, "Oh, fantastic! Let's go invade Ukraine." Does that sound right to you? Doesn't sound right to me. There's got to be more to it than that, right? Right-wing media will say, "Well, see, if Donald Trump was here, that would never have happened." Really, like one guy? I hear people say that to me all the time, especially my really conservative mates will say to me, the future of the West will only be saved if Donald Trump wins the next election in the United States. And I go, hang on a bloody minute. What about the rest of the countries? Do you really believe the future of West, as much as you might love Donald Trump, do you really believe the future of the West relies on just one person? But then I hear my left-wing mates that will say, if Joe Biden doesn't win the next election, we're doomed. The world will go into a catastrophe. I'm like, really? Over one person who's a very old and feeble person? Is this really what we're thinking? Like, this is going to make a big difference? So my point being that I feel like we're constantly being lied to. We're constantly being pressured into taking a particular view, and we don't really understand the issues. What do I know about Russia and the Ukraine? I don't know anything about what's going on over there. I hope that we don't see too many human lives lost. After that, I hope that we don't see too many human lives displaced from the region, that lose their homes and their livelihoods, etc. But what do I know? I don't know anything about what's going on over in that region other than what I'm told. And if you can't trust the media and you can't trust the government, I'm not suggesting that those things aren't happening. What I'm suggesting is we don't really know what's going on over there. And that's tough, because we should be able to form our own opinions. What if our countries are taking a position on some matters that we don't agree with? Are we ever going to be able to know that? In your generation, when Vietnam was going on, there was protests and songs, etc. Now, if there was something going on that we are not fully aware of, do we have any ability to actually protest government, or say to government, actually, look, we 90% support you, but the other 10%, maybe we should pull back a little bit, maybe you're going too far? We don't have the ability to do that if the media isn't telling us the truth.
Rick, I have an answer to the reason you and I haven't heard about it, but it's heard by Shaquille. Okay, why do, here this is from Quora, which is actually pretty good. These are smart people that are on the website. Okay.
With a bunch of 15-year-olds, yeah.
Starts off with this. Why do crazed conspiracy theorists keep citing Operation Mockingbird when such an operation by the CIA never took place? It was Project Mockingbird, pushed by JFK, not the CIA.
Okay, project, not operation. Okay, oh, you got me there. You got me there.
Okay, I'm just repeating. We're having an open dialogue on this thing that you brought up. And this is not me speaking, this Quora is speaking. They're going, when will they grasp the facts and let go of the delusion? So part of the reason why myself, who is an American, and so is Rick Rosner, who's American, did not understand what Operation Mockingbird was, is that I don't gravitate toward crazy, what do they call it, conspiracy theories.
Okay, well, just okay. No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough, Nick. I'll take that. So now you've heard why you shouldn't gravitate towards this ridiculous theory, but just tell us, what is the ridiculous theory that was testified before the Congress and the Senate, or the House of Reps and the Senate inquiries? Please just tell us, what is Operation Mockingbird according to the conspiracy theorist right? Please tell us, what is, well, Project Mockingbird? Just tell us, what was it? Well,
this is according to this. Accordingly.
So you've read Quora. You've read Quora. Let's go back. Let's go back to Google. Let's go back to Google and just ask what was Project Mockingbird?
Even Wikipedia goes alleged conspiracy theories. And like I said, for me personally, I'm not big into crazy right-wing conspiracy theory. Obviously, spent too much time with right-wing crazies. But go on, Rick.
So I got to say that I believe 99% of conspiracy theories turn out to be BS. Though it is interesting that the one conspiracy theory of recent times that we know is true did involve the CIA, which is the CIA helping bring crack to the inner cities in the 80s. So sometimes, very rarely they turn out to be true. And that one time the CIA had its mitts in it.
Well, let me just read you something of much of it. Project Mockingbird was a telephone tap in 1963 of the homes and offices of Robert S. Allen and Paul J. Scott, syndicated news columnists, whose columns appear in the Northern Virginia Sun newspaper. A summary of the project was previously furnished to your office. You want to know where that's from? Oh, that's from the CIA's website. So maybe the CIA is some right-wing conspiracy group too, right?
Well, I mean, because the CIA needs a certain amount of. You got to look at what they do every few years.
I'll read you another little part. Operation Mockingbird was a covert U.S. government operation run by the CIA to implant pro-U.S. propaganda in American media and front organizations. Starting in the 1950s, the CIA began to hire and contract students and people in the media to write false stories or embed stories to favor the US government. In 1967, it was proven that even the National Student Organization was being funneled money by the CIA for festivals and other events. Using phony companies and mysterious benefactors, these collectives created massive amounts of propaganda using the average American student. It was blown open in 1977 when famed journalist Carl Bernstein, who also, with his partner Bob Woodward, exposed the what scandal? In 1974, the Watergate scandal. And in his 1977 piece, The CIA and the Media, Bernstein revealed that certain reporters not only were paid by the US government, but they also engaged in more extensive relationships with the CIA, even sharing notebooks, and some were paid upwards of $500,000 back in those days for their work. Some have alleged that these operations and front organizations still exist, despite little evidence. Still, it's always beneficial to make sure that your information is real. So what I will say to you on that, Nick, is I'm not accusing the CIA or any other intelligence organization of still being behind these sorts of things. All I am saying is, why the hell would I trust anything that I'm being told or anything that I hear from governments or the media, when we know that over the past, at least the past 300 roughly years since Australia was founded and the US was founded by the Brits, that we have been lied to over and over and over again. I am not suggesting you should be a conspiracy theorist. I am simply saying that you should not swallow hook, line, and sinker everything that you're told.
Okay, but let's add one more. You shouldn't trust everything you hear from the government, but you also shouldn't trust everything you hear from conspiracy theorists either. And that's one reason I wanted to fact check this. When I started fact checking it, the facts just don't look good.
I
would consider reliable sources.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Don't trust the conspiracy theorists.
No, I don't.
Well, don't trust the conspiracy theorists. I didn't say trust one, not the other. I said trust nothing. Ask your own questions.
That's true. Trust
Make up your own opinion. Why do you want to just listen to what anybody says, no matter how credible you think they are?
I agree. Trust none.
The trouble is there's not enough time in the day to root out all the BS. And I have another show on this channel where I just yell at my conservative friend and he yells at me. And I'm always saying, do your own research, read about it, look at conservative sites, look at liberal sites and triangulate. But who has time for all that? Like everybody knows the thing that if you put a frog in water and slowly turn up the heat, the frog will boil to death. Everybody knows that. It's not true. The frog at some point will go, holy crap, and will jump out of the water. It's always been a problem. In the 60s, we got a half hour of national news with Walter Cronkite every night. And we had Time and Newsweek and our hometown newspaper. And that was it. And there was all sorts of room for not knowing about stuff, for bias. Henry Luce was this mogul who owned Time magazine, and he decided what would go in Time magazine. And the only difference really was back then we thought we knew everything that we needed to know, and now we know that we're in a frickin' swamp.
No, the difference, Rick, is that you blokes that grew up through the 60s with your free drugs and your peace bloody combi vans running around at Woodstock had the time of your lives, and now you have created this generation of people that are so scared of vice. Don't do drugs, little Johnny. Don't have wild sex, little Jill, right? They go to college. In your era, you went to college, it was a bloody wild rampage of sexual romping through sororities and frat houses. Now, the kids going through college, well, that's what you told us on your TV shows. Now, the kids going through college have to get like a permission slip from her, advance consent from her parents, maybe signed off by the faculty head before he gives her a kiss. Right now, kids are told, thanks to Nancy Reagan, don't do drugs. Just say no. Bullshit. Your generation didn't say no. Your generation was out there protesting. Your generation came up with songs like trying to tell us that you were sober. We're all sitting in the yellow submarine, the yellow submarine. You want to try and tell me that you blokes were sober when that was written? Come on now. So your generation has had this great, perfect run through life. Everything handed to you. You had all the sex, drugs, and alcohol you could possibly want, and then you tell us that we have to behave ourselves. No, I'm not behaving myself.
I worked in a bunch of bars. The 80s, when I was working, were an apocalypse of drinking and drug. I worked in one bar. It held the world record for the most drinks served in a single day, 50,000 drinks. They had forfers. You got 4 drinks for the price of 1. There was a bar in Texas where you spun a wheel, and whatever number came up on the wheel was how many drinks you got for the price of 1, and you could get up to 12 drinks for the price of 1. It was very bad.
So you just proved my point. So you just proved my point. So during your youth, it was amazing. During my youth, don't drink too much, don't smoke too much. Smoking causes cancer. Don't do any drugs. Drugs will affect your kids, etc., etc. Right? You boomers had the best run through any generation's ever had, and then you try to teach us all to be really conservative about things.
So no, because if you lived through it, it was great. But like the first bar I worked in, there was usually somebody walking around the bar with their half their face covered in gauze, because we had drown night. All the beer you could drink, $5 for guys, $4 for women, and there was a notorious road between Boulder and Longmont. People would drive off that road drunk as hell, and they would punch into their windshields, and then they'd be back next week with their face all bandaged.
Yeah, and you know what we have now? You know what you guys left the next generation? You left us with DUI charges, and the person that you were drinking with last week comes in this week with half a face of makeup and the other half of the face not makeup, who can't work out what gender he is anymore. That's what you left our generation with. You guys had a dream run.
What's your point, counselor? I mean, the thing is, obviously there were errors made in the 80s and 90s. Now there's correction. Things were.
I'm saying that as you wildcats got older and got more conservative, the so-called fixes to your errors have taken all the fun out of being youthful today, and we should have the same sex, drugs, rock and roll, and irresponsibility that you blokes had when you were growing up.
So I kind of agree with you. The boomers have screwed everything up, largely because we owned the country with this demographic bump that we got all our wishes, and nobody after us did, because we frickin' own everything. We set up a lot of the climate struggles we're having now with our insane cars. So I've been telling my fellow boomers, we got to get young people to vote. The first step is to go apologize to sorry we left you this crap. But
no, don't do that. No, Rick, don't do that. Don't do that. When your parents have accused you of not doing the dishes, and then you prove without a shadow of a doubt before dad gets the belt out, if you're a kid of the 80s where they can still hit the kids, dad's got the belt out, he's about to whack you, and then you prove unequivocally, Dad, that was your plate you left there. And he pulls the belt back and he looks at you and he goes, son, I apologize. And it doesn't make you feel any better. You got one over it with just that one moment. We don't want your apologies. Right, my generation doesn't want your apologies. My generation doesn't want you to be all feeble and, oh, we're sorry about the world we left you. Our generation just wants you to get off your high horse and understand that when we want to have sex, drugs, and alcohol, we're just doing what you did, but we're slightly more responsible about it. Okay? So let us be. Stop whinging. We won't ship you off to a nursing home too early, and it'll be okay. It'll be all right. Leave us alone. Let us have our fun.
I'm fine with that, but you guys don't even want to have sex. Sex compared to the 70s, when everything but sex was miserable. People now, teens, young adults, are having 25% less sex because the rest of the world is more entertaining. You know, you've got
Rick, let me tell you, our girls are way better looking, right? They don't have the hairy armpits. Well, the left girls do, but the normal girls, they don't have the big hairy armpits or hairy anything else. Our girls are better looking. We want to have the sex. The problem is that we get told that if we as much as ask her out on a date, we may go to jail. We may be thrown out of university or college because of it. And you know whose fault that is? Not the girls, your generation. Because you guys told us it was a sin.
The girls look different. In the 70s, the sexiest girls were Charlie's Angels. Skinny, often blonde girls with no asses whatsoever. So skinny they didn't need bras. That was no bras in the 70s. Now, people have butts, and it's not assless white girls. It's people with substantial butts. And I have a theory that that white guys are threatened by big butts because they just don't have the hardware to get past the butt.
Let me tell you what's actually happened, Rick. Let me tell you. What happened was we had in your generation these radical feminists, and they've told girls things that are the complete opposite of what men want. So, for example, they tell them to shave their heads, but not shave anything down below. That's not what guys want. We're not like women. We don't say the opposite of what we want. We want you hairless from the eyes down, not from the eyebrows up. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that the girls of the 70s who said, oh, I didn't have much of an ass, so I think I'll tell my daughter to get butt implants and have this gigantic ass, right? That doesn't turn guys on either. Just be you, okay? There's certain surgeries that we can't have to make ourselves a bit better. So please accept us the way we are. We'll accept you the way you are. And we're not here to attack you. We are actually hoping that you'll enjoy it as much as we do. And 30, 40 years ago, you did.
Yeah, I mean, the secret that everybody eventually learns is that guys are okay with just about anything.
Now, Nick, being the ultra conservative Catholic that you used to be, yes, we'd like you to weigh in on our discussion about sex and other matters of humanity.
I come from the South, and we play a little different than Australia and California. You know, a little bit more conservative generally, but I don't think there is that big intergenerational problems that really exist, because if you look at the quote greatest generation, what did they really do? They were a bunch of tightwads. I mean, I don't know what, and what they do. They fought in wars. I don't consider them the greatest generation because, frankly, they're the most selfish generation of tightwads you could ever possibly imagine.
Well, the golden generation's tightness passed the boomers down all that bloody wealth for you guys to have a bloody good time.
Well, that's exactly right. Okay, now the real problem, though, is that we've hawked up the next generation in front of debt, like student debt, out of control, 1.7 trillion. Our national debt, 33 trillion. And there's no responsibility in Washington, D.C. or leadership to do anything about it, because it's not.
Neither is there any responsibility shown by your generation. The solution is hey kids, we got this solved for you. You now need to pay more in tax to pay off those debts, and you need to pay more tax to pay off the social security obligations that our generation has, that people like Milton Friedman warned us about in the 70s and we didn't listen to him. So you're going to have to pay that off, but here's what we're going to do for you. We're going to give you the freedom of being able to work longer. So you're not going to get to retire at the same age as we did, because we're going to give you the freedom of being able to work until you're 75.
Right.
Okay. And it's going to be harder for you to buy a house. It's going to be hard. You're going to have a much bigger student debt. But you know what, kids? We'll pay it off. Well, why don't you guys give up some of your pensions to help out the next generation if you care so bloody much?
Let me tell you, that's the reality. If you want to spend $50,000 to put internet service to some person in Podunk, Kansas, you're going to pay for it. Okay. And that's
Nick, that's somebody who is older than your generation that you, Nick, voted for.
Right. Well, thing is, this stuff has to quit. And the thing is, and also $3 billion to talk about LGBTQ rights. Forget it. Save the $3 billion. Give it to the chess players. Give it to the mega society. You know, they'll do more with it than the LGBTQ community will. But see, when you're spending money on garbage like that, you end up in the situation you are today. Yeah, Rick.
People over the age of 40 in America have 94% of the individual wealth. People under 40 have 6%. And people my age aren't going to die unless we get COVID. And so you're never going to inherit anything.
Yeah. Well, also just realize this.
Well, now we have, because Australia is now talking about introducing death taxes. And I love it, because I understand what the Labor Party does. We look at America and we go, America is an amazing country, beautiful country, powerful country, one of human history's greatest ever countries. And they have so many things that we admire: freedom, liberty, Bill of Rights. They've got some great things. They've also got some shit things, right? High taxes, high regulation, terrible education department. So what does Australia do? They say, well, we won't take the good stuff like the Bill of Rights. We're not going to take that. We're going to take all the shitty things. So after they made a modest tax increase to superannuation, which is like a 401k account, they made a modest increase if you had more than 3 million into that, where they doubled your tax rate, because that's a modest thing, doubling the tax rate. They've then said, you know what we should do? We should introduce a death tax. Now, why would we introduce a death tax? Not because we know a death tax works, because we know it doesn't. It doesn't work in your country, it doesn't work in any other country. That's why most of Europe, even Scandinavian countries, have gotten rid of it, because it's inefficient. It doesn't raise the taxes it's supposed to raise. It's a terrible, awful tax. And taxing people on money that they've already paid tax on and then have retired and paid tax again, and now you want to tax it again before they pass it down to the next generation, is a really offensive idea to most people outside of the United States. Even Canada doesn't have the death tax. However, Australia looked at it and went, yeah, brilliant, let's introduce that. Not going to work, not going to raise any more money. Okay, it's going to raise like 0.1% of the GDP is what they're estimating. But
so the U.S. death tax is ridiculous, because I think it only kicks in over, and Nick, you know the numbers better than I do, if you're leaving more than 13 million.
To people, because it's really easy to say to somebody, see those rich people? We're going to tax them. That's really easy to say. But coming up with a tax policy that's actually going to work, coming up with a tax policy that broadens the tax base, that may be painful to a lot of people, but can also deliver extra benefits to a majority of people, that's too hard. So they take the easy way out and they just go, oh, tax the rich, soak the rich. And it's really pathetic. And the sad thing about it is that people who study economics on the left and the right don't promote these sorts of ideas. There's no mainstream economist on the left or the right that I know of who promotes the idea of having, for example, a higher marginal rate of tax, because they know that if the current marginal progressive tax rate doesn't work, increasing it even higher is not going to work. So I say all the time, you could increase my taxes to 200% of what I earn. It's not going to make any difference because I'll just earn my money a different way. But I do believe, and I know it sounds ridiculous, I truly believe that I should pay tax. I truly believe that I should be contributing to social services and other government-provided services that enable me to live, a fairly comfortable life and a crime-free life, etc. But when you try to have a conversation about taxes in a way that would actually advantage the most amount of people, they don't want to do it because it's too hard to argue.
It's complicated. We love simple solutions that can be argued about on the news channels. So yeah, complicated solutions are.
You have to.
Elvis used to hold one thing quickly. Elvis in the 60s was paying a marginal tax rate of 91% of all money of over $1 million that he made.
Yeah.
We used to have insane marginal tax rates.
That's correct. But also realize.
But very few people, Rick, paid those taxes.
Because
I'll tell you, I've got to give credit to where credit's due. I've never really liked Gavin Newsom's policies. I've always had a problem with him, with his policies. Not with him personally, but with his policies. I'm going to take my hat off to him. He has not just once, but on multiple occasions now, gone on Fox News with Sean Hannity and argued his positions. And I have to say, whilst he hasn't completely changed my mind, there's been a number of things that he's brought up where I've said, you know what, he's got a really good point. And that's what happens when people can have a real conversation. You may not win me over on everything. I may not win you over on everything. But if we can have rational, good conversations, we can argue the pros and cons of different positions, that's a really great way to move our societies forward. And whether it be the United States, here in Australia, the UK, where I'm also a citizen, wherever it is, we just need to talk. And when we start labeling people or attacking people for being inhuman or being racist or sexist or not caring about something, we are missing the point of what they're saying. I don't want to pay lower taxes or pay broader consumption taxes or something like that because I'm racist or sexist or because I have an opinion on abortion or because I have an opinion on school systems. I want to pay taxes differently, even though actually if you actually did what I proposed, I would actually end up paying more tax. But I would feel that those taxes are fairer, okay? And when you do that, and when you listen to different people, you will actually, I think, make progress, even if you don't 100% agree. The fact that we're not doing that, we're letting the politicians just play us, we're letting the government and the media just play us, we're the fools. But we're being made fools of by the elites.
I love when Hannity, I'll go to him, just about every day just to see who's on. And it's usually one of his standard BS artists doing the standard BS. I love when he has somebody on where the challenges him. He had Newsom on, and he tried to make Newsom look terrible. Newsom held his own. We need reasonable discussions. We can't just feed consumers the BS that they're used to from their preferred channels.
Rick, I asked you before, if you and I were in charge of world governments and we had the ability to pass any sort of climate change schemes that we wanted to, do you believe that we would pass better things than what's currently being proposed? And you said yes. I'll say the same thing to you with taxes.
I mean, probably. If
you and I, and we don't agree on a lot of political issues, but we're friends. We know each other, right? Neither of us are coming from a position of hate. If you and I were to design the tax code, and you and I were just locked in a room for 6 months, and were told, "I'd like you to create a tax code that's going to work for us moving forward, that's more efficient and better and fairer than what we have right now, there's no question in my mind that you and I could come up with one. But unfortunately, those sorts of conversations by the people that we're supposed to entrust with our futures just don't happen, because it's more important of how much cocaine did Hunter Biden, take? Did Donald Trump, did he interfere with an election or whatever? Who cares? Our countries are stronger than that. Let's focus on the things that actually matter to us.
I agree, but right now we're going to have to focus on leaving because we're at the hour. So I thank our panelists for today, and tune in for the political show, which is 5 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday live Eastern time, but you'll be able to see it throughout the week on the Pod TV network, and we'll see you next week on the media show. Bye-bye.